Hey y'all, it's Pastor Matt here with Grace Community Church Young Adults. It's time for part 3 in our Discovering You, Discovering God series, where we're discovering how do I discover my gifts, and that ultimately leads to me discovering Christ. And so part 3, here we go. So when I was a kid, I remember the Olympics were this huge deal. And I remember as a kid on the TV, the Olympics are coming on. And my dad was originally from Egypt, right? And so what do you do when the Olympics are on? And especially if whatever your nation is, you go like, yeah, like USA, Mexico, whatever. And so I'm sitting there and you're kind of passively watching it. And my dad goes, look, he goes, the Egyptian Olympic team is coming in. And so I looked, and if you look at the slide, you can see this is the Egyptian Olympic team. Okay. I don't know if you need to zoom in or what, but if you look at them, they're all fat. And that's the problem. My dad looks at him and he goes, they are lousy. And of course, Egyptians never win anything at the Olympics. They never do well. And there's a genetic predisposition to not be athletic because Egyptians suck at athletics. And so, I remember, like when I was in middle school, I would go to the gym and my dad and my uncle, they would look at me and it's like, where do you go? He go, you go play lifting, because in like the Egyptian concept, going to the gym is the verb you use for it is not something like work out, like the strong verb, but in Arabic, the verb you use for going to the gym is play lifting, because they have absolutely no respect for physical endurance. They're flabby people. My sister, when she lived in Egypt, my sister, she won't go a day without jogging. Like she's a workout fiend, and she was like, I was living in Cairo, in Alexandria, and she was like, and it was time for my daily jog, so I'd go out and I'd jog. But the problem is, like, Egyptians don't jog, so no one had ever seen it before, and so all of a sudden, the Egyptians see this like American girl just like jogging in the streets, and they're looking at her like, what in the world is going on? Like, why are you running? Like, sit still. Because Egyptians are not good at athletics. Egyptians eat. That's what Egyptians do. They don't do sports. They eat. And unfortunately, this is 50% of my genetic code. Is I'm half Egyptian. And so athletics have never been a strong suit for me. And this led me to being convinced that I suck at outreach and I'm not really built for outreach. Like, why? Well, so fast forward to about I'm in high school. And I'm, people are like, you got to go do outreach. All right. You got to go reach out to the community and be present with people that are, not fortunate, and, the spiel. And so I'm like, all right, let's do it. And so what happens is, what is outreach? I wind up, in the inner city, and they give me a basketball, and I'm supposed to like play basketball with the kids, and it's not good. It doesn't go good. I'm not good at basketball. And these kids are looking at me like this, like, ridiculous, like, half Egyptian white kid. Like, this isn't going good. He's not good at this. This doesn't work. And I look at the fruit of that and I'm like, nobody really, was alleviated of any sort of poverty. No one was more spiritual after this happened. No one, was more morally astute after such an event. It didn't do anything, because I was, it wasn't working for me. And that really points to the problem in the church of how we do outreach is we love to tell people where to go and what to do, but we never tell them how their gifts fit into it. We're like, basketball worked for somebody else, so basketball is going to work for this half Egyptian kid in the middle of Birmingham, Alabama. It doesn't. It really doesn't. So that's my goal this week. You see there's on the screen, we've been talking about the gifts, and if you didn't see last week, you're going to be fine. It's going to build on last week a little bit, but I think you'll catch on pretty quickly. We talked about APEST, the apostles. He gave some to be apostles, prophets, evangelists, shepherds, teachers from Ephesians 4. My goal this week is to use the gifts to mobilize us for summer outreach. My goal is to take everything we've been learning and the sort of diagnostics and just kind of understanding of each other's gifts that we've been getting and say, how can we mobilize that to use it for outreach? This summer, what we're doing is we're going to focus everything we do on outreach as a young adult group. My goal is to get every single one of you involved in outreach in some sort of way this summer, where you're doing something bigger than just staying in the church and coming to Bible studies. I want us to actually mobilize to impact the community so that we can, for real, be intentional neighbors that reflect Christ. Because the Christian life has something so much better for you than just sort of discovering what your gifts are so you get a self-esteem boost. The Christian life is this: you're discovering what your gifts are so that you can go out into the community and actually be the hands and feet of Jesus to reach Sarasota and transform it and make it something completely new. So this sermon is sort of a connecting sermon that's wrapping up this Discovering You, Discovering God series to lead into our next series. Let me get that slide up for the next series. The next series I'm calling Post-Demic. Post-Demic. Because for this next series, we're settling down with the COVID stuff. We're still doing social distancing and everything, but we're starting to come back together. And do you know what I want to do with us now that we're coming back together? I want you to turn around. I want you to turn around, and I want you to go back out. I want you to go back out. You're like, oh my gosh, we finally get together. Oh yes, we finally get together. But the good news is, I don't want us to stay gathered together. We're coming back together so that ultimately we can go back out. And that leads me to a really awesome, exciting announcement. And that's this. I have permission for next week on Tuesday, May 26th. We're going to meet together in person. We're going to actually see each other. We're not going to be able to touch each other. You still got a social distance. You're not allowed to lick each other. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to get to see each other in person instead of doing this online. We're still going to be filming it on Facebook Live, but it's actually going to be a live gathering with worship. And I am announcing tonight that this Tuesday, the 26th, so a week from today, at our Bee Ridge campus in the pavilion out back, we're going to have the all-new gathering in. The same teaching, the same great worship. We're doing the discussion groups in person, though. However, I'll still have an online discussion group for some of those that can't come in person. But you know that beginning part of the gathering in, if you've been before, where everybody gets here at 6:30 and we eat cookies and stare at each other, and it's really awkward. We're not doing that anymore. We're doing something awesome at 6:30. 6:30, we're doing it all different. We're going to have a food truck. We're going to have bocce ball. We're going to have a photo booth. There's going to be a trivia game. It's going to be the best place to hang out and have fun before we start service. So we're going to do something totally different. We're going to be outside for worship and teaching. It's going to be on that pavilion right back behind the Bee Ridge building, which you can find our address online. And so I'm super excited about coming back together. But my goal in us coming back together is to start this series so that we can go back out. Why? Because I want you to take what we've talked about in this Discovering God series and go out and do something. So look at that slide, the cultivating the gifts in me. What is our goal? I want to mobilize you to go back out. How do we do that? This sermon, we're going to talk about the two parts that we have to do in order to lead to mobilizing to go out. First, cultivate the gifts that are in me. Second, appreciate the gifts that are in others so that ultimately we can mobilize to go back out. We can mobilize to go out. All right. So we're going to take each of these fivefold gifts, apostle, prophet, pastor, teacher, and we're going to talk about how do I, first of all, if I have this gift, if this gift is in me, how do I cultivate it? So cultivating the gifts in me. Why are we doing this? Because God doesn't give the gifts that he gives you as full on oak trees. He gives you acorns. All right. It's your job to take that acorn of an evangelistic gift, that acorn of a teaching gift, and water it and nourish it and grow it and make it something spectacular. And some people think like, oh, you're sharpening up on your ability to teach, or oh, you're sharpening up on your ability to tell the truth and be prophetic, or you're sharp. That's just so selfish. It's actually not, because here's the great news. The greatest gift that I can give to everyone is to develop the gifts that God has put inside of me. The greatest gift that I can give to everyone is for me to grow as a teacher. So what we're going to do is, with each of these five gifts, I'm going to give you, how do you cultivate it if it's in you? What are the helpful tools for those of you who have each of these gifts to grow in it? So if you're evangelistic, how do I grow in it? What practically can I do? This is going to be a real practical message. So cultivate the gifts in me, plus, second part of that is appreciate the gifts in others. Appreciate the gifts in others. So what I'm going to do is I want us to move, because this is not just about me and my gift. Because if I just have my gift of teaching, we'll just have a bunch of Bible studies all day and we'll never reach anybody, right? I've got to partner with other people. Now, here's the problem with that. Other people make me mad. I don't like other people sometimes. Sometimes other people's gifts really frustrate me. Sometimes when people are really evangelistic and got to get on my nerves, or sometimes and here's the problem. That's us being pulled apart, and we'll never actually fulfill Christ's mission on the church to reach this community if we get frustrated with each other. So, because what keeps us from mobilizing is not your lack of gifts. It's our inability to appreciate other people's gifts. Do you know why I don't have the evangelistic gift? Is because God wants me to need those of you that do. Do you know why I don't have the prophetic gift? It's because my wife does, and God wants me to need her. All right. So how do I accept the things that come with these gifts that are going to frustrate me and actually appreciate these people so that we can mobilize together to do Christ's mission on the earth? So we'll start with the apostolic gift, which we started with last week. And quick recap, apostle here, and people are going like, wow, apostle, what's he talking about? I made the statement, words mean different things in different contexts. The same way the word neuter means something very different to my Spanish teacher than it does to my dog. Apostle doesn't, in certain points in the New Testament, mean somebody that writes scripture. At other points, it just means somebody that's sent, someone sent on behalf of someone else, someone who goes outside the boundaries to expand. Secular picture of this. This is the Bill Gates. This is the person that's always building something, expanding something. That's Steve Jobs. That sort of person that's visionary, that sees the future. And a lot of these people are missionaries. They're church planners, or they can be CEOs. So if you have the apostolic gift, if you are thinking, I've got that in me, or from the test last year, like I've got some of those marks of that gift. How do I cultivate the apostolic gift in me? How do I cultivate the apostolic gift in me? How do I take that apostolic acorn and grow it? Well, here's what you need to know. First of all, your role is to constantly vision cast. Your role is to make things real and alive. I saw this thing. It was on. It was a study on churches who do capital campaigns to raise money. And if they do this one thing, and we haven't done this here, we probably should, but if they do this one thing, their ability to raise money for a building like triples. It's just one thing. You know what it is? If they put a 3D model of the new building in the foyer, all of a sudden people start writing checks. Why? Because they have vision. They can see it. It's not an abstraction, it's something physical that they can see. And the apostles are the ones that give us vision of where we're going. They don't just give you something you can hear, they give you a future that you can see. So how do I grow if that's my gift? Is I have to go outside of my world to stir my own creativity. I have to go outside of the confines of my day-to-day mundaneness to stir my own creativity to see how things can expand. I would say I'm like probably primarily pastor and teacher, and I have like a tinge of apostolic in me. One of the things, when I lived in Orlando, one of the great things about living in Orlando is if you have a hard day at work, Disney passes are really cheap. And so you can go to this magical place and kind of dream. And so if I had a hard day at work, sometimes me and my wife would be like, let's just go to Disney World, like, just see it. We had these passes. It was great. Anyway. And so we would go, and I remember this. I saw this museum. It was the Walt Disney Museum, and it was about Walt Disney's creative process. And in the museum, it talked about how he didn't feel creative. He felt like he couldn't get his people being creative at a certain point. And so what he did is he said, okay, he took his team of animators and they all went down to Latin America and they took pictures and they discovered everything. And if I don't even remember the name of the film, but there's like is it the Three Amigos, the Three Cabreros, whatever it is. And it's all came out of, he was like, I can't just keep my people here. We have to go outside and see something different to spur our creativity. And that is what the apostolic has to do to spur themselves. What I did is I was leading an internship program, and it was really weak before I got there. And our whole team was weak. And I just saw that. And I was like, you know what? We have to see an internship program that works. So I was like, okay. I called some churches in Atlanta that had some really good internships. And I got our team, all 5 of us, just piled in this car and drove to Atlanta and picked the brains of these other people leading internships and saw all these other internships. And everybody walked away from it like, oh my gosh, I know how to turn this around. And the whole thing turned around and we tripled enrollment and God just breathed on it. But it was what's the apostolic? The apostolic has to get outside to really be productive. And you get outside to learn to bring things back, and you take what you have and you go outside with it. It's that it goes both ways. How do you cultivate this? You need to travel. You need to go see people do things well that you dream of doing if you have that apostolic thing inside of you. So how do I appreciate the apostolic gift in others? Well, here's the thing you have to realize about people with the apostolic gifts is they're innovators. They've got to create. And I have a little bit of this in me. Like I can't stay motivated if I'm not feeling creative. I can't stay motivated if I'm not feeling creative. And there's a dirty little secret to innovation. Somebody gave me this book called Innovation's Dirty Little Secret. Great book. And the dirty little secret to innovation is most innovations fail. 80% of innovation fails. But it's that 20% that changes the world. Here's the thing about people that are apostolic is they will strike out from time to time because they're going to be innovative, but you've got to be patient with that. But you've also got to be wise, if you're not apostolic, when you're partnering with these people, to limit how much damage they can cause. We don't announce at this church, we don't say, well, every week, every Wednesday, we're going to have this new meeting. What do? We say, well, it's going to be a special event one time. Why? So that it doesn't get so expansive and committed. You can't put commitment by creativity. You have to do one-offs. You have to limit the damage that innovation can do, but you have to do innovation. You've got to be passionate. You've got to be patient with this, and you've got to be patient with apostolic people. They get excited about vision, but what they'll often do is they'll struggle to distinguish the current reality from future vision. So I worked for a guy that had this in him, and he would recruit people to work for us, and he would tell them, we're going to do this massive thing with tens of thousands of dollars and tens and thousands of people and blah, blah, blah. And then they would get there and there'd be nothing. And they'd be like, what? Was he just flat out lying to me? No, it was that he was a visionary, and he got so consumed with vision that he often couldn't tell what was the current reality versus the future vision, because it was that real to him. It wasn't a charlatan, but it was, here's the good news, is it was actually his gift, because he would create. And that 80% of the time it was awful, but that 20% of the time he would create something new that was really, really revolutionary. And here's the thing that you have to realize: when we have the apostolic in place, they'll create things that are new. And what is new brings momentum. What is new brings momentum. What is momentum? It's you ever been a part of something where there's just that fire on it, that everything that an organization or a church does just turns to gold, and there's constant excitement about everything. That's because you have somebody with those apostolic gifts who's generating new ideas. And when people see new, they get excited. And so apostolic people. So if you're thinking, I've got this gift, how do I mobilize for outreach in this next series? I want you to think about this. Apostolic people mobilize by focusing on areas where the church is not yet present. Apostolic people get excited about new things. They'll get bored with the old, but they're excited about places that the church is not yet present. So when we do outreach, you've got to ask, where is Grace Community Church not? Where have we not been? What's new? What frontier? That is how you're going to play a part in these outreach groups. Now, people are like, what are these outreach groups specifically going to be? I don't know yet. That's why we're doing this series. I want you to daydream with me. I want to get constant emails about an idea you have for an outreach. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put you on a pedestal. I'm going to let you market it. I'm going to mobilize you. I'm going to give you all the power. I want you to do it. I want you to go out and do it. I want you to mobilize each other. And so if you're listening to this and you're kind of that apostolic bent, and as I'm speaking to you, you're getting like, I know I've got an idea. I want you to write that in the comments section right now. And we'll go through those and talk about those later. But you got ideas of like, oh, here's how we can go where Grace Community Church has never been before. Right. Yes. Now, the prophetic gift. What is the prophetic gift? We talked about that last week. The prophetic is the proclaimer of God's will. It's the agitator. They commonly serve as outreach coordinators or social workers or artists. We said the epitome of this, Martin Luther King. We don't mean prophecy in a mystical way here. We mean somebody that just proclaims truth to injustice. How do you cultivate the prophetic gift in me? If you walk in this, your role is to constantly agitate the comfortable people by reminding them of injustice. Your role is to remind people that your role is to remind rich white people that are really comfortable about human trafficking. Like, your role is to go to rich people and remind them that poverty exists. Your role is to go to, these white communities and remind them about the plight of minorities and racism. Your role is to agitate the comfortable by reminding them of injustice. Now, if you have this in you, how do you cultivate this? You have to be present with the oppressed. You have to be present with the oppressed. You have to get outside of where you are, and you have to go and be among the poor. Go and be among the oppressed. Why? Because injustice is what gets you moving. You have a passion for truth, and that is your great gift. Now, here's how do I appreciate the prophetic gift in others when I don't have it, and I'm probably least prophetic of all these things. those who are wired prophetically will see things as black and white. And that can be really frustrating because they see injustice and they say, this is wrong. This is right. This is wrong. And so that can get really frustrating because a prophetic person can struggle to say, well, we're just going to agree to disagree. They don't like that. That doesn't make them comfortable. And it can be very frustrating to just kind of brush up against that. But you have to appreciate them for what they can actually add. And that's this, is they if we didn't have prophetic people in our midst, we would spiral into moral decay, right? They keep us morally with it. It's a huge part of a healthy church. And so because what prophetic people do is they connect us to God's heart. There's a quote by the great rabbi Abraham Heschel. He wrote a book on the prophets, and he said, if you're reading the prophets and you think that the prophets are about telling the future, you've actually missed the point. The prophets are about bearing the emotions of God. The prophets are about bearing the emotions of God. And if you have a prophetic gift, your great gift to us is you bear the emotions of God for us. And you remind us of God's heart for the poor and the oppressed. Prophetic people mobilize by finding injustice and being present. If you are connecting with this prophetic thing and you're like, I think I've got that in me, you know what you need to go do? You need to go be amongst the poor. You need to go watch documentaries about human trafficking. You need to go watch documentaries about social injustice. You need to let yourself feel that and be present in it. Why? Because you have to have a foot in both worlds. You have to have a foot amongst the privileged and a foot amongst the oppressed. Why? So that you can bring awareness to us. Why? Because people want to say the church is backwards. The church has always got these things wrong. Let me tell you this. The church has actually been the prophetic voice that has moved every great revolution in world history. Let me say this. People say, oh, the church is always backwards and racist. It's the church from which Martin Luther King preached the end of segregation. It's the church from which Charles Finney preached for the end of the American slave trade. It's the church from which William Wilberforce decided to lead Parliament to end the British slave trade. It's the church from which Dietrich Bonhoeffer decided to give the only answer to stand against Adolf Hitler in Germany in the Confessing Church. Because there is a great tradition in the church of actually standing against injustice. That's your role, and that's what we need you for. Now, next, the evangelistic gift. You know, we said the archetypal evangelist is that guy or girl that sells Cutco, and it works for them. They can sell the Cutco, they can sell the Amway because they're natural recruiters, they're natural salespeople. An evangelist is literally just a proclaimer of good news. Commonly, they're a recruiter. They invite new people to church, or they're a salesperson. How do you cultivate the evangelistic gift in me? If you have it in you, and I'm very low on this one, your role is to constantly recruit. Now, how do you grow good at recruiting? Is you become a student of people's needs and motivations. The best recruiters understand what makes people tick. They understand what motivates people. They understand human needs intuitively. And that is how they can recruit. They can draw people into something that's awesome, that's going to help them. Now, how do I appreciate the evangelist if I'm not? And I'm not, is you have to realize evangelists have a big problem. And I realized this. I read a biography of a man named D.L. Moody, and he was sort of Billy Graham before Billy Graham was Billy Graham. And back in the 1900s, and he has this quote in his biography. He says, "I've always been an impulsive man. I've always been an impulsive man." He led massive organizations and started seminaries and everything. But he would lead people to Jesus, and thinking about that, Mike, everybody that I know with the evangelistic gift is impulsive. They run off impulses. The same thing that makes them go up to somebody and say, "Hey, come do this. This is going to be awesome." makes them go and do stupid things sometimes, right? My roommate in college, Tommy, he had this gathering. He would gather new people and he would find people and bring them in. He was such an evangelist. He was so gifted at it. But he was a jumping bean. He was everywhere, right? And I looked at him. I said, one day I was just talking to him. I said, Tommy, what were you like as a kid? And he goes, I was a very hyper little boy. He said to me, I remember when I was in the 6th grade and I discovered that it's not right to shank your and it didn't surprise me because his great gift is he could bring people in, but the reason he could bring people in is he wouldn't think about the consequences of inviting them. That impulsiveness, if you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so impulsive and I can't stand my impulsiveness, it's actually your gift. I mean, you've got to be mature about it. And you've got to, we've got to be patient with your impulsiveness, but realize the flip side of it is there's a magnetism to impulsive people. The greatest recruiters, the greatest evangelists are impulsive people. So how do we mobilize the evangelistic gift to go out? How do we mobilize the evangelistic gift to go out? What you have to realize is when we mobilize evangelistic gifts to go out, is they'll make good news go viral. They'll make it spread. And you want to know how you can tell if a church has evangelists? It's if it's constantly growing. Because they're connectors. They're inviting people. They're bringing people in. They're spreading. They're going out and bringing in, going out and bringing in. But they also go out and take out. And they create this thing. Evangelistic people mobilize by gathering their friends to go outside the church. Then they mobilize the people they meet to come back into the church. So if you're thinking, I've got that evangelistic, tinge. How am I a part of this outreach thing? You know what you need to do is you need to find some of the outreaches that we're doing, and you need to just recruit friends. Just recruit a bunch of your friends, and then you have to go to Grace to come be a part of some of the outreach things we're doing. But then your job's not done. Because when we're going out into the community and reaching people that are not a part of Grace, your job is to invite them back into the church and to bring this cycle of I'm taking people from inside the church outside, I'm taking people from outside the church inside. And that is when we grow and we really, Grace Community Church isn't just about grace, it impacts the community. And if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm evangelistic and I've got an idea to mobilize, as with any of these, just give me some comments in the comment section. Just give me some notes. Give me some ideas of ways you think you could be a part of mobilizing for outreach in this next series. The shepherding gift. So a shepherd we talked about last week, and sometimes I'm using the word pastor, shepherd, pastor interchangeably, as a person who leads and guides sheep, a person who has compassion on people in their moment of weakness. They commonly serve as a counselor, maybe as a therapist, or maybe as a chaplain. They're compassionate towards people. So how do I cultivate the shepherding gift if it's in me? Well, if you have the shepherding gift, and I have this to an extent, your role is to care for people. Your role is to love on people. Your role is to have empathy. And the way you cultivate that and the way you grow in that is practice listening to people until you can feel their pain. When I was in college, there was a lecture that there's a professor that she was everybody's favorite professor. She was this dynamic professor, and she gave a lecture on active listening, and it forever changed my life. And she described how she would just sit there with students and hear them and repeat back to them what they said until she was moved by it. If you can learn the art of not thinking about what you're going to say next, but listening to the other person and rewording their thoughts, repeating it back to them until their pain becomes your pain, that's shepherding. That's loving people. Because people, I've got news for you. People don't want your advice. They don't. I want you to cry with them. And that is the great ministry of presence that somebody with the pastoral gift can bring. Now, a lot of times we love pastoral people, but there can actually be challenges in appreciating pastoral people. Because Here's how you appreciate the shepherding gift, the pastoral gift in others. So you have to realize this about them. Pastoral people will slow down short-term advancement. Pastoral people will slow down short-term advancement. They're not going to help you be productive in the short term because they're going to say, you're going to help people. You're going to say, how are you feeling? You're going to say, how have you been doing since your family member passed away? You're going to surgery coming out. How are you doing? And you're going to make people come in touch with their emotions, and you're like, this isn't getting anything done. This is not getting anything done. This is not productive. And that can be frustrating. But pastoral people will slow down short-term advancement for the sake of long-term sustainability. You want to know how you have a church without pastoral people? It's if you're constantly doing things, and then you're burning people out. Because nobody is there for them in their time of crisis. The pastor, the person with the pastoral gift, is constantly present in people's pain and taking care of people and celebrating people's victories and being present with them in their struggles. And if you lose that, you will not be able to do mission long term. You won't be able to mobilize to go out long term. So how do you mobilize the shepherding gift to go out? Pastoral people's care for the team is what actually brings long-term team health. But also, pastoral people in outreach can do something that can really reach people in an incredible way. And I say this because I have a pastoral bent to me. When I did juvenile detention outreach in college, I loved it. I loved it. And I would go into these juvenile detentions and I would preach and teach, that's part of my gift. But I would say, after I teach, I'm going to sit in the back at a chair, and I'm gonna have my journal, and I want you guys to come up here, and if you have anything that I can pray for you, I just want to write it down, and I'm gonna pray for you this week. And these guys would line up, and just to have somebody who would feel their pain and pray for them. And your goal is to not just, if you're pastoral, not just to take the team and check up on them, but you have this gift to go into the community and to be present with hurting people that know they're hurting. You need to go into a crisis pregnancy center. You need to go into a widow. You need to go in and be present with people that are in painful situations and listen to them and feel their pain. And you'll reach people. What was really cool is I'm not an evangelist by nature, but what was so cool is over that summer of working in that, just going once a week and hearing those guys kept coming to me after they got out of jail, and they started coming to church with me. Because I'm a recruiter? No, because I'm a pastor. And that's what you've got to learn to do. Now, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I've got a pastoral bent, and you know what? I've got a great idea of how I could mobilize this for outreach. I want you to put that in the comments. Just throw that out there in the comments. Teaching gift. Teaching gift. We said the secular picture of this is Neil deGrasse Tyson. He loves to learn, and he loves to make knowledge come alive for other people. He can talk about astronomy, and I don't care about science at all, but I mean, I think it's important, but I want other people to know about it. I don't want to know about it. I respect it. It's just not my thing. He can make it come alive, and I can listen to him talk about astronomy and astrophysics. And I'm like, why am I interested in this? This is so boring. He's just an amazing teacher. A teacher is a person who instructs or they educate. They commonly serve as a teacher, a professor, or a small group leader in a church setting. How do I cultivate the teaching gift in me? And I'm passionate about this one and thought about. Your role is to constantly sharpen us through education. Your role is to educate us. Your role is to bring information that's going to take us to the next level. The greatest teachers, learn this. If you want to grow in teaching, I've taught a class for years on how to teach and preach. I'm going to do it again sometime, I'm sure, in the next year or so. Love doing it. And I always say this, the greatest teachers are first the greatest students. People come to me, they say, how do I learn how to teach the Bible? I always tell them this. Your ability to teach the Bible will never rise past your ability to study the Bible. And the best thing I can tell you, if you have a teaching gift, is you love to study, that's good. Study, 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 research, research, research. If you have a teaching gift, I encourage you. I wouldn't say this to everybody. Go spend an hour, say, I'm going to spend an hour a day in the Bible. I'm going to spend an hour a day reading the Bible. I've been doing that some, and it brings me alive. It gives me an ability to do this, what I'm doing right here. Study, study, study. That's how you cultivate and grow that acorn of a teaching gift into an oak tree. Now, how to appreciate the teaching gift in others. Here is the problem with people with the teaching gift often, is they can struggle with thinking so much they forget to act. They can struggle with thinking so much they forget to act. I can be guilty of this a lot. I can live in abstractions and in theological abstractions and sort of never really make it practical. And you've got to be patient with teachers to help them make things practical, help them do things. I always know in a team, I've got to, the worker bee types. If I don't have a worker bee type, I'm going to just spin around in circles. And I've got to discipline myself to do stuff. I can't be lazy, but they've got to partner with people that provide action. How do I mobilize the teaching gift to go out? Is teachers mobilize by focusing on areas where education is needed. I started at the beginning saying I tried to, be mobilized in basketball and in sports. And, this Egyptian, it wasn't good. It wasn't good to give me a basketball. Those kids, I don't think any of those kids came any closer to Jesus. I think if they were saved, they lost their salvation just watching me play basketball. They were like, if this is the Christian life, sucking at basketball this bad, I don't want to have anything to do with that. And so it was not productive. But one of the most productive season of my entire ministry life was spending 3 years in amongst a very, very underprivileged neighborhood in Orlando and working to teach people how to study the Bible. I call it hermeneutics. It's the science. You're like, hermeneutics, is that a disease? No, it's the science of how to study the Bible. I taught a class, and a lot of the people I taught this class to are GED people. They're like, why would you do that as outreach? No one says, oh, outreach, don't play basketball, go teach hermeneutics. Like, but it went viral. People loved it. People took the class, people loved it, and people discovered the Bible in a powerful way. Why did that work? Because I'm passionate about teaching. And my gift is teaching. It's not basketball. My gift is as an educator. And I discovered that about me so that I could go and do outreach. And some of you are having clicking moments of, you know what? I'm a pastor. I need to do outreach from being a pastor. I'm a shepherd. I need to do outreach from doing it. I'm apostolic. I need to have that outward going, building organizations, dreaming thing. And that's what happened for me and made me impactful. And I want every single one of you to do that, because and what happened for me is my gift, my great passion is to make the Bible come alive for people. And people are always asking me, why don't you just do the practical things? Just give people practical steps. But I'm intentional in every single sermon to do this, is to show how everything I teach relates back into the gospel. If some of you are not believers, this may initially offend you, but I want you to just hear me out on what I'm saying. The best professor that I've had in seminary, he looked at us, he was a preaching professor, and he said, when you preach a sermon, if I hear that sermon and I could preach it in a Jewish synagogue or a Mormon church or a mosque or a New Age congregation, and I could get away with it, I'm going to fail you. We're like, wait, what? He's like, you can give 5 steps to a better life. Go get your concordance. Get your 5 steps to a better life out your favorite Tony Robbins book. Get you a concordance. You find Bible verses to back it up. I can find a Bible verse, take it out of context. I can back up anything. You don't have to even make that smart to do that. You name anything, I'll back it up with a Bible verse, and give people practical tips to a better life. But I'm convinced Practical tips to a better life can help you, but they will never, ever, ever change you. You know what changes people? What changes people is when they see Jesus. What changes people is the vision of who Christ is and what he's done. First John says, and when we see him, we will be like him. Here's what that means, is if I look at Jesus, if I see who he is, if I look at the beauty of what Christ has done, that actually makes me like him. Because Jesus's beauty is contagious. And in each and every one of these 5, they're a reflection of who Jesus is. Jesus is the chief apostle. He is the great prophet, the great proclaimer of truth. He is the great giver of good news, the evangelist. He is the great shepherd. He says, I am the good shepherd, and he is the rabbi, the good teacher. You want to know how you grow at these things? You look at Jesus, and then you become his body here on the earth. Awesome. I want to give one more quick announcement to wrap up this series. Is next Wednesday. We don't have a slide for this, but next Wednesday from 6 to 6:30, we're going to have an online discussion panel. This is in addition to the Tuesday gathering in. And on this online discussion panel, I've invited somebody. We know we're going to have somebody from the sheriff's department, and me and Connor are going to be on there. We're looking to have somebody from the medical field and somebody from the school system as well. We'll see all on there. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask them this. And these are secular, community leaders. How can we as Grace Community Church, young adults, impact the community? What needs do you see? You know what I want you to do? I want you to tune in with that. And I want you to be thinking about your gifts. Why? Because I want you to take what you've learned about yourself over these last 3 sessions and say, how can I go out and be an intentional neighbor that reflects Christ? So I want you to tune in online next Wednesday, 6 to 6:30 for our online discussion panel where we're asking community leaders, what can we as young adults do? Because this whole summer is about taking the gifts that you've just discovered and mobilizing them for outreach. Awesome. If you need to go. I'm going to see if there are any questions out there that you've put on the live stream. But if for the purposes of whatever, this won't be discussed in the discussion groups. But yeah, did anybody pop up any questions, Edwin?
So far no questions, but you had a couple ideas already.
Oh, let me hear some ideas and throw in some questions in there if you're listening.
So one, Christina Kelvin said, speaking of outreach, I know big brothers, big sisters are in need of more bigs.
Come on. Let's do it.
And then one more, we've got Angelica Yoder suggested a sunrise beach cleanup and then breakfast afterwards.
I love it. That's really cool. Yes. Like, shoot me an email. We'll organize this, and I'll give you. In one of the gathering ends coming up, we'll get something together where you can promote this, and I want us to all mobilize around these things. That's really cool. No questions? Okay, cool. Awesome. I love y'all. Y'all enjoy your discussion groups. It's been so fun going through this series. Also want to give a special thanks to our producer, Edwin. Edwin has labored countless hours making all this tech stuff work so that I can just show up and look pretty. Love y'all. Good night.